You've probably never heard or seen of the show before, and that's okay. I didn't either. Not until recently. While chillaxing on a fine quarantine evening, I just happened to be listening to the Beatles. I'll admit it, I'm not the biggest fan of these guys, but I do like some of their hits, and yeah, I know, the Beatles and anime? What could they possibly have in common? Besides JoJo, of course, a very majestic show indeed. But I digress. My favorite song from these guys is titled Get Back. Not an expert here, but I believe it was one of the last songs they ever made before the band officially broke up. This song was special in that they technically had a fifth member playing with them, besides the usual Beatle members of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr.
Everybody loves Ringo.
The electric piano played in this song was performed by Billy Preston. He's an amazing American musician, a top session keyboard player who specialized in R&B, rock, soul, funk, gospel. Wow, look at him go. He holds the distinction of being one of the 5 musicians ever credited on a Beatles recording, besides the other 4 members, of course. I did some more digging into who Billy Preston was and what kind of work he did after he played with the Beatles. Funnily enough, in more recent years, or somewhat recent, he actually sang the main theme song for this anime that I'm showing you right here. The anime in question that I ended up binge watching for the sake of soaking in all the beautiful artwork, writing, music, and I guess for the benefit of making this video, is called LR, Licensed by Royalty. It's what I would consider one of the most British anime out there, and it's got some familiarity with Lupin III and Cowboy Bebop, 2 shows I frequently talk about on my channel. This show has some other general picaresque style influences from stuff like James Bond, specifically Live and Let Die, so it's more of a spy anime than anything else. I just knew I had to watch this to the end and see where all those influences amounted to. What I got from this was a little different than what I expected and not necessarily all that amazing, but there is something worth watching here, and if you like these kinds of things that I mentioned earlier, you won't be disappointed. But you didn't forget about this guy, right? I told you he made a song for this anime, yet I didn't even show it or allow you to hear it. No worries, I'll let you listen to it. I'll let you listen to one of the greatest anime openings I've ever heard in my life. It's called Go Where No One's Gone Before.
And make you my queen. Let us go where no one's gone before. Yeah.
Damn, that's a nice song. It's got that New Orleans jazzy kind of feel. Definitely different from the usual J-pop or metalcore tracks they like to use for anime openings. It stands out amongst a sea of anime openings in a positive way, and successfully allowed me to latch onto the show and watch all 12 episodes plus the OVA, all the way to the end. Yep, you heard me right. That song you just heard is the only reason and the only thing that forced me to watch every single episode. I just wanted to listen to the song again. You know, I probably just could have listened to the intro on repeat and satisfied my hunger, but the song is just too good. It puts me in such a nice mood. The credits song, however, is a bit generic, but definitely not a bad song to listen to. Unlike the opening song or the rest of the OST for this anime, you can actually find this song on iTunes, sung by Mikaku Takahashi. Forget the music though, I haven't even talked about what this anime is about. The title for this show is so strange too. LR? What does this mean? Gives me flashbacks though, I'm not gonna lie. Ugh. LR refers to the 2 main characters, Jack Hafner and Ro Rickenbacker. Oh, I got you. I see what they were doing. The names are taken from companies that manufacture instruments. Also, the names I will admit I horribly butchered. Like I said earlier, this is one of, if not the most British anime I've ever seen. And so, their names are actually pronounced as...
I'm Ro Rickenbacker.
And I'm Jack Hoffner.
These 2 guys work at a private sector known as Cloud 7, an organization established by the royal family of Ishtar for going undercover for special jobs that require intervention and can't have any government ties. These secret agents are tasked with protecting the fictional nation of Ishtar, which is heavily based on the UK, and as a result presents a James Bond kind of feel that persists in just about every episode. Jack is the blonde, calm, composed, and more rational guy of the duo, while Ro is that charming, picaresque, short-tempered, impolite, but stylish partner. Both of these guys form the LR tag team duo. The team name LR is very infamous between many of the villains and protagonists and just minor characters in the show. This anime does have some similarities to Detective Conan in that at the very end, when everything's all figured out, there's no loose ends, and Jack and Ro usually manage to make it out on top, albeit with some sacrifices along the way. Their main base for Cloud 7 is out of this fancy estate, taking on missions from their boss who brief them on what their assignment is, and they're peeing. I should give me one of those. The opening song did a well job demonstrating the upbeat and relaxing tone for the show. Too bad it only works for the first half. You see, the second half of the show transitions to a more serious and a tad gritty narrative with the way the plot and writing is handled. It becomes a problem right when they introduce this other area, Ivory Island, which is basically the fictional version of Ireland in the show. Ivory Island and Ishtar have this big rivalry, which actually mirrors the Northern Ireland conflict, or what it's most famously known as, the Troubles, which was an ethno-nationalistic conflict that erupted in Northern Ireland back in 1968. Wow, that's a pretty specific historical tie-in. I don't even remember learning about this in school. I don't remember learning anything in school, so yeah, man. I like serious and gritty stories, don't get me wrong, especially if they're written well and executed beautifully, both in dialogue, cinematography, sounds, etc. But see, my one big problem here with this show is that the sudden tonal shift really doesn't make any sense. It seems like they wanted to go for this Lupin III meets James Bond / Mission Impossible kind of thing here, but as the series progressed, they opted to fixate on one bigger plot, a plot that has a darker bearing than ever before, which involves the previously mentioned Ivory Island, and all for the entire second half of the series. This sounds fine in theory, you know, a lot of franchises tend to do this where they start off kind of lighthearted with a warm tone and then they just kind of transition eventually to a more darker storyline, but it's more grand in that way and epic. But the problem here is that there's only 13 episodes and the second half contradicts terribly with not just the opening theme song, but the general soundtrack and overall flow of the show that was implemented early on. I mean, I like it, but at the same time, there wasn't just enough patience with the show's pacing to properly set it all up. It just feels very abrupt. At least to me. I don't find the art style to be anything noteworthy here, but it is nice. And I'm not even talking about for its time. Just in general, I find the animation pretty good. And the backdrops are gorgeous and make up for the otherwise bland and plain drawn character art. As you can probably imagine, Ro and Jack are two characters the show centers around the most, and it's fine that the show does this. The characters are excellent and have some great dialogue, something that I would arguably consider above average when it comes to anime writing. However, this doesn't leave much room for the other supporting characters. The girl here, Noelle, plays more importance later on in the series, but besides that, the other agents, villains, characters, they honestly just feel like NPCs in a JRPG. I guess there are a few exceptions for some minor characters, but honestly I'm picking straws at this point. If it sounds like I'm a little pessimistic, I'm not trying to be, but there are some things to nitpick about this show. There's a lot to like here though, it's just that some of it isn't on the surface as much as shows like Cowboy Bebop is for me. Now that I mentioned Cowboy Bebop, the series is actually pretty similar to that anime in the sense that it follows a certain musical theme. Thanks to Shinichiro Watanabe's involvement, he's allowed his shows to have a certain musical theme that remains distinct from other traditional anime. For example, Cowboy Bebop follows a, bebop genre, but it's also known for its jazz. Samurai Champloo is known for its hip-hop, Space Dandies is known for its disco and electronic influences, and although Watanabe-san was not involved with LR in any way, this show also follows a similar pattern for having non-conventional music being the centerpiece for an anime's OST. And in this case, we've got a clear callback to 60s British rock-inspired pieces. I guess you could say this is what you get when you combine Japanese influences with the Beatles. I mean, they even got someone who actually collaborated with the Beatles decades ago to perform for their score, so if that's the music direction they wanted to go for and project, then mission accomplished, it worked pretty well. It's a shame the OST though is really hard to find these days. Thankfully, YouTube does have the main theme song uploaded. I'll put a link in the description if you want to hear it again. I know you might want to because, let's face it, it's a pretty good song. So what does make this anime worth watching? Well, the plot structures for this show, especially the more contained stories that only fit in one episode, definitely give me Cowboy Bebop vibes, in a good way. It's not philosophically profound or as deep in any neo-noir aesthetics as Cowboy Bebop successfully emphasized on during its runtime, but there are some pretty interesting episodes that do give me feels and cinematography that fit perfectly in any Cowboy Bebop episode. It may not be as well done or have the same level of fidelity in animation and logicality, but it's definitely good in its own right. There are some deep writing and themes explored here, with many complicated plots that have a nice build-up, and then pay off well toward the end of either the episode or episodes, depending on how long a plot is developed for. The mysteries and twists have good writing too. Good in the sense that things are properly built up and lead to interesting stories for our two heroes to face. Our tag team duo here plays off of each other rather well, and they've got beautiful chemistry. It's just a shame hardly anyone else has the same treatment. That's all I want to say about the story actually. I feel like if I said anything else I might spoil a bit too much or perhaps ruin your perception of this anime. It's definitely not that bad. There are just some things I don't like that I keep bringing up since it's so vivid in my head. Something I did like about this show a lot, however, and what keeps me coming back besides the music, is the voice acting. The voice acting is surprisingly phenomenal. Surprising for me at least. I didn't expect the British accents to be so good. And when I say British, I'm talking about the entire region. Don't worry, I know the difference. I'm not just talking about England. Since Ishtar is like the UK, naturally, the characters should sound and feel like they come from, well, the UK. New Generation Pictures got in charge for localization for this show and got many British actors to help out with the anime. British people on staff also helped train people who were American actors to put on more authentic British accents. They even got actors who could perform Irish accents, something you don't really see in anime too often. Usually, as far as traditional dubbing goes, every character, regardless of nationality the show wanted to convey, would all speak in the same dialect, or most of them would at least, depending on where the voice cast originated from. So it's shocking to see how far the ADR director went to make sure the characters all sounded accurate. This is one of the few instances where you have to watch this in English, kind of like Black Lagoon. The Japanese voice acting would take away from all the dialects that the English voiceovers bring. Man, some of this voice acting is really good. They did an excellent job with the dubbing on this show. Overall though, I'd say besides the rushed pacing, the story, and maybe some minor animation nitpicking here and there, it's not a bad show. If you're looking for something like Cowboy Bebop, but you finished that anime already since it came out like 20 years ago, then, okay, look, I do realize I'm making a lot of comparisons to Cowboy Bebop specifically, but that's honestly the only show I had in mind while watching LR. No, this anime is not as good as Cowboy Bebop, but again, I get a similar feel from it, and I know that's not much to go off of, but both shows cater towards similar audiences and have similar kinds of action and gore. There were also some wacky Lupin the Third-like moments that were placed around in the first couple episodes, but afterwards things take a 180 and the show relies more on the James Bond influences, as well as the odd but strangely fitting historical connection I mentioned previously, making this more of a somewhat serious spy show. If you're into that sort of thing, then this is up your alley. So after all of my explaining, if you wanted to watch this show, well, easier said than done. I talk about niche content on my channel that just doesn't have enough spotlight from people in my eyes. Lupin the Third, Firefly, actually those are the only two. But I do like to dig up hidden gems once in a while, and this definitely fits the bill for me. It's got great action, awesome music, amazing voice acting, and overall it's a smooth, enjoyable ride. A little bumpy though in the middle, but overall it's not too bad. The big problem with this show is that it's actually pretty hard to talk to people about this online. I'm not a heavy forum guy per se, but man, I can't find anything for this show. I took a real deep dive on Google, really tried to just find anything, besides the generic wikis that don't even have conclusive information on the show. On my anime list, I found a barren place where people were talking about this show, but that was back in 2016. Besides that, I couldn't find anything else. So if you want to watch this anime, things are looking pretty bleak. Amazon does have some DVD listings though. The footage you're seeing here is from what I captured off of Amazon's DVD set. I saw that there was strangely a Blu-ray limited edition set being sold on Amazon too, but it seems for whatever reason the algorithm Amazon uses thought this show was Prison Break. What? Crunchyroll doesn't even have this up for streaming, Netflix doesn't have it, Hulu doesn't have it, Amazon Prime doesn't have it. But you know, that's okay. I feel thankful that I found out about this show in the first place and had the opportunity to make this video. I figure most of you guys watching this will find this information sufficient enough and won't really care about watching the actual show. If you really do want to watch the show though, your options are very limited unfortunately. There is one website that I found that does have the entirety of the series. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. Don't worry, it's a completely safe link and there aren't any pop-up ads or anything like that. It's just a website that happens to be streaming this long lost forgotten show. If you get to watch the show, just so you know, my favorite episode is episode 9, Suspended Game. I know it's in the second half of the show and I spent a really long time making fun of that, but regardless of how I feel, I know that the show's arguably highest degree of writing happens to be in these last episodes of LR, and whew, it's pretty good. LR licensed by Royalty is a hidden gem. I admit I took a big risk watching this, but I definitely got something out of it, positively. I really can't get enough of the voice acting and glorious soundtrack. Billy Preston's work really shines here. Oh, I just love this song. I did enjoy this series, despite my criticisms, but it's just not as good as the other shows I mentioned earlier. This anime is definitely worth a try. It's not amazing, but it's not bad either, just somewhere in the middle. You might find it to be much better than I thought after watching it, but that's entirely up to you. Regardless if you want to watch this or not, if you've made it this far, well, thank you for watching, and oh yeah, you could like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, but only if you want to. Alright then, see you later I guess, I got nothing else to say. Yeah.